On November 8th, 1942, the Allies made our first big move in World War II with the invasion of North Africa. To get fighter cover for our troops, we needed air bases quickly. 3 small bases outside of Iran were chosen for the P-38s. This was the Army Air Force, after all, and the ground crews were soldiers. So they had to land and get to the bases before the fighters landed. The ground crews landed on November 10th, and by November 11th, they were moving inland. We were receiving sporadic opposition from the Vichy French in the area. Dewey Prince of the 71st says, "I was picked to lead a squad of 12 men. I positioned my men in a single file behind me and prepared to move down a street which ran along the waterfront. We had only moved a short distance when the shooting started. I yelled for the squad to take cover and tried to see where the shooting was coming from. I looked back to see if my men were all right. One was sitting in the street holding a Garand rifle in his lap and a clip of bullets in his hand. He looked up and said, 'How in the hell do you load this damn thing?' Dewey continues, 'When I looked for cover, the only place I could find was between 2 boats, and Sergeant Eck had gotten there first. Sergeant Eck was a big man, and I'm a small man, so part of me was sticking out in front of the boats. About this time, Eck said, 'Damn it, they got me.' I told him, 'It's just your imagination.' He said, 'Imagination, hell, look.' He pulled back his collar and had a wound in the flesh just above his collarbone. The bullet must have passed over me and hit him because I was standing directly in front of him. Eck got bandaged up, put on his pack on the other shoulder, and we walked about 7 miles to St. Louis to join the rest of the squadron. I don't think he even ever checked into the hospital with his wound." The next day, even before the ground crews had secured the base at Oran, the fighters started taking off from England. They were told not to fly over Spain or Portugal, as those nations, while technically neutral, tended toward the Axis. It was a long flight, and they were told that if they had to land anywhere, they'd do better in Portugal because it was less unfriendly. Jack Ilfrey, in his book Happy Jack's Go Buggy, tells of his experience. Jack's right drop tank fell off suddenly, and without that extra fuel, he knew he couldn't make it to North Africa. He decided to turn into Portugal. He says, "Presently I saw a beautiful airdrome lying just outside the city of Lisbon. Long, beautiful runways and big administration buildings. Everything looked inviting and seemed to beckon a welcome. And without another thought, I put my wheels down, circled the airdrome, and landed. When I completed my landing roll, I saw 6 men mounted on a horseback galloping out to meet me. The horsemen looked like something out of a picture book. Big plumed hats, sabers, pistols, and gay trousers. And for a split second, I thought it was the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. Gesturing wildly, the men motioned me to taxi my plane toward a building which turned out to be the administration building, and meanwhile I was hurriedly tearing up maps, papers, and throwing them into the wind, and with more frantic gestures, the guards told me to stop on the apron just short of the building." As Jack entered the building, he noted that there were a number of aircraft with German swastikas parked on the ramp. Inside the building, the Portuguese gave him cake and coffee, but then began to question him. The German pilots of those planes outside, gathered behind him, stood there and listened intently. He didn't answer the questions, and the Portuguese got visibly irritated with him. Finally, his plane was refueled, and a Portuguese pilot explained to Jack that he had to fly the airplane over to a military airfield and asked Jack to show him how to start the engines. Jack climbed into the cockpit with the Portuguese pilot standing on one wing and showed him how to start one engine. Then Jack suddenly started the other engine, blew the Portuguese pilot off the wing, roared across the field, and took off. As Jack left the Portuguese in the dust, he looked up, and here came another P-38 into land. The P-38 with one engine out was flown by Jim Harmon. Jim didn't receive the moderate welcome that the Portuguese had given to Jack. He was practically clamped in irons as soon as he arrived, and his plane was seized. This is a photo of Jim Harmon's plane with Portuguese markings on it. It was not returned. Jim Harmon did get back safely. Jack Ilfrey got on to North Africa and soon was flying combat missions. He survived them all and came home to tell his stories.